So again, as the daughter of a priest, being raised in dead religion, going through the rituals and the ceremony and the outward expression of Christianity without that inward waking up to the voice of God in our conscience, that started happening to me after a lot of years of hypocrisy. And I just started understanding a lot of things because of all the counseling we've been through and all the different kinds of therapies and what dead end roads we went down to. I realized that, there's a lot of ways to evade our personal responsibility to take a look in the mirror at how we're actually loving people. And I think towards the end of my time with Michael, I realized, I had this almost premonition that something bad was going to end our relationship and that I needed to try to get my hands clean with him and really just speak to him because I cared about his soul, not anymore about how he was affecting me selfishly. And it's almost like I was escaping from the cunning craftiness I'd always lived in with him because he was so manipulative and controlling. I grew up with manipulative and controlling people, so I was manipulative and controlling, and, so goes the story, right? It's actually learning how to love people freely is where Christianity is really at. If I don't take the log out of my own eye, I'm going to damn anybody that comes my way for the twig in theirs. And there's a lot of deep truth because Jesus said, even you start looking down on people, you start condemning people to hell, you're messing with your very own soul. And there's all kinds of scriptures to fortify that, but probably so again, Michael went into a psych ward. That's a great story in itself, but I won't tell that right now. He got kind of forced in there. It was great. It was a surprising situation, but after 2 months, that hospital called and said, he shows no signs of mental or emotional disturbance. We're going to let him out. So I went on the run with my kids for about 2 or 3 months, and I was actually pretty much going crazy, feeling like a hunted animal. And I finally told my mom, I just gotta stop running. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I was a total disaster. And I told her I was just going to go see him and leave the kids with him, or social services. I felt like I was just cracking up. My mom took me to an adult children of alcoholics place across the state. He knew a priest there. That priest was very insightful about my mother and father's relationship because my mom had known him so long. So I got some real clues to different things in my life spending time with him. And I got a call one day from a sheriff's office, and there's a whole story there, but I don't want to divert to all that. A bunch of miracles happened where I ended up understanding that the sheriff's office that I'd talked to about all of his crimes never contacted the sheriff's offices that they should have. 3 months later, it was just a miraculous thing that happened that led to his final arrest. It was just a bunch of miracles, one after the other, that started happening. And he ended up, the cops ended up breaking down the doors and arresting him. But again, the manipulation and control was so deep. I finally just said, oh my God, Michael, if I had done what you did, I wouldn't be controlling the system, working out some plea bargain. I mean, I can't even believe you're doing that. Why don't you give up the control and take what is, I would say, I deserve to die. I started thinking about what true repentance might look like if I had done what he did. And I realized I'm not looking at any kind of true repentance here. So I told him on the phone after he gave some crappy confession at about a $50,000 bill to the state of Colorado because they had to fly to another place where he was incarcerated, that, the manipulation and control wasn't even going to stop. And the guy wasn't sorry. And I was dying under his eye. I just told him, I'm not ever going to talk to you again until you give a full confession. And that was just the stuff I could kind of link him to. And he ended up doing that. And then there's a lot of other miraculous things that happened to him actually just confessing because he was such a smart criminal. They couldn't even catch him, really. And even though they knew he might be responsible for horrendous situations in 10 different counties met. So who knows the things he did in the darkness? I don't know. I just know of some, and that was enough to get him 150 years in jail, and a lot of that he didn't even have to pay any sentencing for. That's how bad the judicial system is at this point, which made me even more depressed. And I realized I wasn't getting any help going to church too. I was getting more because everybody was treating me like a victim, and I was trying to get out of being a victim. So I was swimming deep. I was going down, 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 ready to give my kids up. I mean, I didn't see any way out of the hell we were living in. But through that course of time, my heart got purer towards the Lord in the suffering. And who is God, the God of creation? The Spirit of truth. I started telling myself the truth more and more and more, and the truth started making me free. And it's a good thing I didn't meet Gene Sullivan a year earlier than I did, because I could have, because my friends had an ice cream shop in Jackson Hole, Wyoming that I was going to go see them at. And Gene was actually there doing a program. I didn't know that at the time, but I was having to really wake up to that still small voice of God in my conscience and realize that my life was shipwrecked from avoiding and not listening to and turning up the volume on, why am I losing my peace right now? Why don't I feel right about this? Because when you never tell yourself the truth about that, man, that's actually God's voice trying to help us. And I realized how much I'd shut that voice down and how costly it had been. That all the problems in my life really had to do with that one thing. I couldn't hear the voice of faith and love compelling me to say, I don't feel right about this. and go down the road with the Spirit of truth. And really, I had a lot of shut up women in my past that never really dealt with things deep inside. And all the time, I started remembering all these things with Michael that I didn't feel deep inside right about. But when a woman is desperate to be loved, she'll shut all that down, just like my mom did with men she was with. All kinds of stuff had gone on with men in my mom's life, but she never turned up the volume on that deep voice of God. People just go through the Christian car wash instead and do the ritual and the formal kind of Christianity instead of being honest with their fear. I was like a pig that had a ring in my nose and just was led by fear and unbelief. I didn't even understand how to be led by love and faith until, going through the valley of the shadow of death, fearing everything with him. And I realized, man, I haven't ever really lived to please God, and I haven't really woken up to that still small voice. And I decided to change my ways for the sake of my children. I knew I would take them down in a way, and I'd never teach them to count the cost of diverting to selfish pleasure and happiness at the expense of shutting down that little voice, the very compass of our soul. And I started realizing how much that had cost me my whole life, and that I needed to wake up from my sleep. And so through that course of time where Michael was incarcerated, and I went down a road of a lot of different things happened then, but one thing that really happened was I started to wake up to the voice of God. And one day I was in my apartment saying, Lord, I can't live in a shell with my kids the rest of my life. I think that's going to screw them up if I just isolate myself from people altogether, which is pretty much what I was doing. And I realized, that again, those thoughts that come from God, that we need to love and we need to be loved. And we do have to have wisdom on who we're going to pick to love us and who we're going to pick to love, really.